Good morning. So, this is actually the earliest time I ever record a YouTube video. I'm actually recording this at 11:15 in the morning, and technically it's 10:15 in the morning because tomorrow the clock does go back 1 hour, which means that I will get an extra hour of sleep. And for those people that live in the US or Canada, you will also get an extra hours of sleep because the clock will go back 1 hour if you're living in the US and Canada. If you're living elsewhere, then yeah, it depends. You probably have already got an hour of your clock turned back, and you already got that hours of sleep, or you're just waiting for it. But either way, let's talk about the conference semifinal first leg, and there is a lot of delicious kind of matchup in these four meetings. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would be talking about this one and also this one as the main talking point. But we're going to be starting with Columbus versus the Red Bulls because I am going to go in order of the kickoff time of these matches. All of these matches will kick off on Sunday. This match will kick off at 12 o'clock Pacific time, which is my time, and 3 o'clock Eastern. This one kicks off at 2:30 my time, 5:30 Eastern. This one kicks off at 4:30 my time and 7:30 Eastern. And finally, the nightcap. This one kicks off at 7 p.m. my time and 10 o'clock Eastern time. But either way, let's actually dive into the first matchup of the first leg of the conference semifinal matchup. And that, of course, is Columbus versus the Red Bulls. And Columbus, of course, won the regular season series. They drew 1-1 in the first meeting, but they also won 3-2 on the road against the Red Bulls. And they're one of the few teams that actually walk out of Red Bull Arena with all 3 points. And this is also the rematch of the 2015 conference final where Columbus was able to win 2-1 on aggregates. And in that conference final, Columbus won the first leg 2-0, and they lost 1-0 in the second leg, but they did move on to the MLS Cup final because they won on aggregates. But when you look at this matchup, well, you know how I said that the Red Bulls was the one that I picked to win MLS Cup, and that I thought they would definitely have enough to go all the way to MLS Cup and eventually winning their first ever MLS Cup. Yeah, I definitely did not think they were going to be playing against Columbus. And I feel like this is something that I probably should have done when I did the prediction, which is that I also need to do a follow-up video of each MLS team that's in the playoffs and who is the team that they do not want to face in any stage of the playoffs this season. And for the Red Bulls, it is Columbus. And the reason why they do not want to face Columbus, and this is a really bad matchup for the Red Bulls, is because Columbus have their number. And Columbus have found a way to play through their press. Greg Berhalter has really done a great job implementing this system where he's able to bypass this Red Bull press. And you know, the Red Bulls, in terms of the style that they've been playing throughout the season, is that pressing kind of style. It's been something that they've been doing for the last couple of seasons. It's their bread and butter play. But Greg Berhalter has found a way to bypass that press. And really, the way that he's been bypassing that press is just kind of sit deep and trying to absorb the pressure. And also, he has guys in that back line that is able to pass through that press and not make mistake in the back to give the ball away in a silly position to the Red Bulls and just kind of play in the hands of the Red Bull press. So in many ways, the Red Bulls going to have to use another method to beat Columbus in this matchup. And I think the other method that they need to do is that they need to break Columbus defense down. And that is something that definitely is not what the Red Bulls are. And it is something that they've been having a lot of trouble in the past. And I think this season they have done a little bit better, mainly because one of their missing pieces and the guy that they've been really looking forward to as the guy to break down compact defense, they found it in this offseason. And that guy is Kaku. I mean, he is a guy that is known to break down compact defenses with his wonderful passing skill and also scoring kind of banger goals outside the box. And the Red Bulls will really need Kaku to step up in this game, and hopefully he can bypass this Columbus defense. But you know this Columbus defense is going to be very organized, and you just think with this Crew team and with the way that, is this going to be deja vu all over again? The fact that everybody have wrote them off like what happened last season when nobody thought that they were going to go deep into the playoffs. And look what happened. They went into the conference final. And this season, it's the same thing. Everybody have written them off. They had to go on the road to play against DC United at a hostile environment known as Audi Field. And they won on penalties. So this seems like a very similar script to last season, and I did kind of say that this Columbus team is sort of a little bit weaker than last season. I mean, yes, they still have Justin Miram there, but they don't have like Ola Kamara, and even though Jarzy Zardes has been kind of like that Ola Kamara type player and score even more goal that Ola Kamara has, he hasn't been scoring a lot of goal down the stretch. If you not include his hat trick against Minnesota, he was in a very bad slump in terms of scoring goals. So, and also the other players around them that they want to rely on scoring goals are not really scoring goals. Although one other guy that they probably will also rely on, it is going to be Pipa Higuain, also known as Federico Higuain, as the guy that will score the goal. He scored 2 of the goal for Columbus in that game, and he's also going to be a big kind of impact player that the Columbus will really rely on going forward on the attack. But when I look at this matchup, I think Columbus will want to try to grind this two-legged affair out. I think it's important, if Columbus have a chance to move on, then they need to win their first leg, and if they win the first leg, then there is a high possibility that the Crew will do exactly what they did last season to NYCFC, which is win the first leg, and they'll be heading into the second leg with a very kind of comfortable situation. Although last year Columbus had a big lead heading into that second leg against NYCFC, I don't know if the Red Bulls are going to give Columbus that much of a cushion that the other New York team did last season with Columbus. And, for the Red Bulls, if they want to move on, they need to first score an away goal, because this is a two-legged affair. And this goes out to all the teams that is playing away in this conference semifinal, because if you score an away goal, then that would really be very important heading into the second leg, because if the aggregate gets tied up in the second leg, depending on if you score more away goal than the other team has in the second leg, then you will of course be moving on into the conference final. So for the Red Bulls, they don't necessarily have to win this game, but they also got to make sure that they score an away goal, which means that they cannot just lose 2-0 or 1-0 and not bring an away goal heading into Red Bull Arena and heading into that second leg. But yeah, moving on into the next match, and moving on to a matchup that I'm pretty sure is probably the best matchup of the conference final. I know Atlanta and NYCFC fan will disagree, but seriously, when you have the Cascadia Derby in the MLS playoffs, and when you have probably arguably the biggest derby in MLS in the playoffs, that is going to be absolutely amazing. And there's going to be definitely fireworks in terms of this kind of two-legged affair between these Cascadia foe. And, this is also the first ever Cascadia Derby in MLS playoffs. Portland actually won the regular season series. We got the D there on Portland. But they won the regular season series. And this is actually wrong. Each team did not win one on the road. Well, Seattle actually won one. Well, each team actually did win one on the road, because the Sounders, of course, won the final meeting 1-0, and Portland, of course, won on the road in the second meeting. But the first meeting, it was a 1-0 victory between the Timbers and the Sounders. I mean, I feel like this season the Cascade Derby hasn't had a lot of goals, and maybe a lot of that has to do with the fact that both of these teams has very good defense, and both of these teams love to play in a compact style of defense. And both of these teams don't really kind of have a lot of, they still have creativity on their team. Obviously, with Seattle, they got Nicholas Ladero, and for Portland, they have Valeri as the guy that is going to be the creativity kind of guy for their team. And with the fact that both team has a good defense, this could really be a very kind of close series. And maybe this could potentially be a series where it's going to be very low scoring. Okay, it's going to be a very low scoring series with not a lot of attacking kind of chances for both teams. I mean, I think this series, I think it kind of favored Portland a little bit more than the Sounders. I know the Sounders have all those playoff experience, and they always will find a way to somehow make it into the MLS Cup final. But Portland so far this season has found a way to break down this Seattle's defense. And when you look at all three meetings, Portland were the better team in all three of those meetings. Even in this matchup where Seattle eventually won, that was because Portland wasn't clinical whatsoever. And that might be one thing that could come into play in this one, where the Timbers got to be clinical if they have those chances, or else the Sounders will nick a goal somewhere. But when you look at the regular season matchup, I think Portland was the better team. Although, having said that, when I mentioned regular season matchup, you've seen what happened in the playoffs this season and how regular season matchup kind of doesn't matter. When you look at the regular season record, it's just kind of the complete opposite of what's going to happen in the playoffs. So maybe the Sounders will somehow will be that kind of team like the other teams so far in MLS Cup playoffs, where they just ignore what they did in the regular season and they really shock the team that has a better regular season head-to-head kind of records. But overall, when I look at this matchup, it's going to be a very fascinating matchup, and it's really hard to call which one will win this one. It kind of, I think in some way it might depend on what happened in the first leg. The first leg will really tell a lot of story about what we're going to see in the second leg. I think if Portland can win this first leg and they don't give up an away goal, then they could definitely be in a good shape to head to CenturyLink and able to, don't even need to get a draw to move on into MLS Conference final. And for Seattle, if they can, they don't have to win against Portland, but if they can get an away goal or even get a draw in that game, then they could be in a good position heading into the second leg. But it really depends on what happened in the first leg, and the first leg will really set a tone of what we will see in the second leg in this matchup. But heading into the other matchup that a lot of people will pay attention is NYCFC versus Atlanta. So both teams, of course, drew in their regular season meeting. NYCFC and Atlanta drew 2-2 when this game was at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and NYCFC and Atlanta also drew this time 1-1 when this game was at Yankee Stadium. And both of these teams have never advanced to the conference final, although Atlanta, they're only in their second year existing in MLS, so obviously they still haven't reached the conference final after what happened last year when they got knocked out by the Columbus Crew. But and also something has to give in this because of the fact that both teams will never have not advanced to the conference final, which means that somebody's is going to reach to the conference final. But when you look at this matchup, obviously the number one question in this matchup is, will Miguel Almiron start for Atlanta? And I know Almiron has been back with the team in terms of training but the question is, will he be 100% healthy coming into this matchup? And, remember, he suffered a hamstring injury a couple of weeks ago, and even though I am no doctor or physician, I know hamstring injury are one that is very tough to try to come back from, and if you come back way too early, then you could have a serious threat of re-injure that hamstring. And when you look at this matchup and how if you put Almiron in this matchup, I don't know, does it actually guarantee the fact that Atlanta would be so much better than NYCFC? Because keep in mind, this game is at Yankee Stadium, which means that this game is going to be played on a miniature pitch. And knowing what we saw in the first meeting, or the meeting that took place at Yankee Stadium, which was actually the second meeting, when Almiron was playing in that game, he definitely did not look good in that game, and he really kind of struggled playing on that pitch and playing in that game. So if you're Atlanta, the question is, and this is going to be a big decision that Tata Martino is going to have to make with this team, is that do you risk it? Do you put Almiron in this game and start him in this game, or do you put him on the bench and maybe let him come off the bench and maybe he'll make a big impact? Or even the more riskier option, do you not play him in this game? Because, if you do not play him in this game, there is a high chance that you will lose this game against NYCFC, because NYCFC is very good at home. And we've seen what happened with Atlanta when they do not have Almiron. And also, did I also mention that Atlanta not only have a problem with Almiron being healthy or not, but they also now have a problem in the left back too. Chris McCann is now injured for 3 weeks, as I read a report that he, of course, he injured himself, and I forgot what was the injury was, but he's out for 3 weeks, which means that who's going to be playing in the left back? Ideally, I think it would be probably Gresso playing in the left back, and I'm pretty sure it won't be Greg Garza playing the left back. Like, if Greg Garza plays in the left back for Atlanta, then Tata Martino probably did not learn his lesson from that TFC game, because you saw in that TFC game when he put Garza in that left back, it did not work out whatsoever. So most likely, I think Julian Gresso is going to be playing in that left back row, which he's been doing okay in that left back role, despite the fact that that's not his natural position. But obviously the biggest question here is, will Almiron be healthy, and will he be starting in this game? And if they don't play him in this game, then they're pretty much putting a lot of house money in terms of what happened in that second leg, where if they lose this match, and depend on if they do not get an away goal, they will have to really work for it in the second leg. And, NYCFC, I think, from what we saw in the last two matchups, you can tell that this team looked like a team that was so dominant in the first half of the season. And the fact that when you look at all those guys and all those kind of key playmaker for this NYCFC team that is now back, fully fit, this is going to be a really tough matchup for Atlanta. And which is why I did say that in my prediction that I did pick NYCFC to win this matchup, because I don't know about Almiron's health and the decision that Tata Martino is going to have to make in terms of Almiron, and whether or not if he's going to put him in this game, and that if he does not put him in this game, they're playing house money in that second leg. And sometime when you place house money in a MLS playoff game, usually that does not pay off. So that is gonna be it's gonna be very interesting to see how this is gonna go, and we'll see if Almiron will start in this game or will he come off the bench. But now talk about the last game of the conference semifinal preview. We got RSL versus Sporting KC. So this is the rematch of the 2013 MLS Cup final, where Sporting KC won on penalties, And RSL, of course, won the regular season series. They won the first meeting 4-2 and draw the second meeting 1-1. And by the way, in this 2013 MLS Cup final between both of these teams, there's still a couple of players that is still on this current RSL and Sporting KC team that play in that 2013 MLS Cup. Pretty much the entire back line except for the right back position has played in the MLS Cup final. Aiko Opara, Matt Beasler, and Seth Sinovic play in that MLS Cup final, and Graham Zuzi is another guy that also played in that MLS Cup final back in 2013. And for RSL, Kyle Beckerman, Nick Rimondo, and also João Plata play in that 2013 MLS Cup final. So, yeah, there's still some familiar names from that cup final a couple of years ago. Although for Sporting KC, that cup final where they won the cup, that was probably the only good moment that they had for the next couple of years. Because little do we know that by winning that cup final, they would be pretty much suffer a 4-year kind of punishment of them just getting knocked out in the knockout round every single year. And in other words, Sporting KC has now lost 4 straight playoff series coming into this matchup. But it's okay, because I still believe that Sporting KC, from what I'm seeing this season, they have looked definitely a team that is on a mission to try to break that curse of them just, for whatever reason, whenever they get to the playoffs, they just completely shit the bed. And the fact that I think this Sporting KC team has shown something that we have not seen in the previous Sporting KC team, which is down the stretch, they don't collapse. They're still working hard and they're still getting results. Although, this matchup against RSL, this is a matchup that probably will be very tough for them. And you know how I said about the Red Bulls, if there's one team that they do not want to face in the playoffs, it would be Columbus. For Sporting KC, it will be RSL, because RSL has won the regular season series, and the fact that RSL is coming into this game with a whole ton of momentum. I mean, the confidence level for this team is literally on cloud 9 right now after they beat LAFC on the road. And I think one thing I will say about RSL is, and the thing that I might question about them coming into this game, is how is the defense going to be coming into this one? Because the defense against LAFC, although they conceded 2 goals in that game, they could have conceded more if LAFC weren't more clinical. And this Sporting KC team is a very clinical side. So you just wonder, can this RSL defense can hold up their shape? And can DeMar Krylak continue to score banging kind of goals, and other player on this midfield and all other young player in this midfield can continue to score goals like they've been doing throughout this season. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, when I look at this matchup, I kind of still favorite Sporting KC because they have the experience and also the talent player. You know, RSL still has the talent, but they're very young kind of talent, and you don't know if they're gonna once again show up in this game just like they did in that game against LAFC. And you don't know if that's just kind of like a once in a couple year of things where RSL was just so up for it that they of course were able to beat LAFC because of that. They need to have that similar kind of belief system, and really they need to just play with no fear again. You know, one of the reasons why RSL won that game was because they didn't play with any fear whatsoever. They were really trying to go forward on the attack and trying to score goals, which they eventually were able to do. And in this game against Sporting KC, I think they're going to have to do the same thing. They just have to play with no fear. They just have to play the fact that they have no expectation. Because remember, nobody expect RSL to be in this position. Like I said about how nobody expect RSL to be in the playoffs. Well, nobody expected them to even get to this far, to the conference final, and even host a playoff game at Rio Tinto Stadium, which now they're going to get to do in this match. So, yeah, it is going to be very interesting to see how this one will go down and whether or not if RSL will once again shock the world and pull off a big upset against Sporting KC. But yeah, that is pretty much it for your knockout, or not knockout, conference semifinal first leg matchup. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these games? Let me know in the comments also your prediction for these first leg matchup. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.